I think this is going to be really a different answer depending if you're comparing a relationship with your parent versus a spouse or a chosen family. But two-parter. Can you really have an honest relationship, friendship, or otherwise if you cannot process anxiety or triggers in front of someone? And then second part to that, because think it through, what are some of the best moments that you can remember with friends, with your chosen family, and where they helped support your processing rather than demeaning you for it? And what did that look like? Just bringing a little levity to what the possibilities are there.
I can talk to the second one because something immediately came to mind. Um, and this was like, I think this was like my most extreme moment of anxiety ever. Like I was going to defend my dissertation. Um, and like right before that, I literally was like shaking. I couldn't eat at all. I was like so nervous that like all of the work I had done for this PhD for like the last 4 years was like culminating in this one moment. And I was just so anxious that I like literally started crying. And I just could not even like think of what I needed to do or what to like do in that moment. And I think like one, like my girl was just like, hey, like you got this, calming me down, stuff like that. And it was working to an extent, but like I think when she basically was just like enabled me to like do what I needed to do to get in the zone. And at that point it was just like, let me just sit in this car, turn my music up as loud as I can, and just like not think at all. Just like let the sound waves like kill all of my thoughts. Because like if I was gonna like sit there and like try to like talk myself into like you got this or anything, it just wasn't working. My anxiety was like at that level where nothing I could do was working, and so I just needed an excess of outside stimulus to like drown it out. Maybe that's healthy, maybe it's not. Long term, I'm sure it's not. But like in that moment, like it was exactly what I needed. And I think like her just being able to like not like as a therapist, she knows coping mechanisms and things like that. She could have like, tried to like talk me through it. Instead, it was like, okay, do what you feel you need to do, and like I'll support that, and you got this. And just like her sitting there with me was like really all I needed. And in that moment, that like really
DeVynne,
helped. I still was super nervous though,
DeVynne, I thought it was
but
interesting how
it helped.
this was like, it started as one of your highest anxiety moments, ended up turning into one of your best kind of outcomes with sharing with a person, through your girlfriend. She helped you through this, and now it's kind of a beautiful moment for you to remember together. I similarly had a moment with my dad, who I'm currently living with, but this was about 10 years ago. I was 14, having my first panic attack ever, and felt like the end of the world. I was sobbing, couldn't, form words, and he actually picked me up and turned the shower on and put me in the shower and just held my hand and said, "I'm here for you. I love you," over and over again, and then just with "be quiet." And and it ended up, I think maybe that's Leah, we were talking about how the shower feels so good, and in a way I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe that's why I put that moment with now me going to the shower such a cathartic feeling. But I now think of that moment, that brought me and my dad so much closer together. And I think often with parent-child relationships, sometimes you hear of parents, saying, don't cry, or be a man, or, all these different things that kind of block those feelings. So to have, an authority figure, a family member give you permission to feel and to cry and to just hold space for you is such a powerful feeling, and one that I will never forget. And how beautiful that both of us had these kind of at the brink moments, maybe panic attacks, that were then absolved by people we love, and that we can look back and see them as more of a positive thing.
Yeah, good point.
I will share one that was recent. I had a few select few people that are in my circle over for Christmas, it's COVID, and I moved to this place a week before the lockdown, so no one's come. I haven't been able to host, and um, I'm very exuberant. I'm either very quiet or I'm very exuberant and in people's face. And I said to actually Xann's partner, I was like, "You look so good today!" And I made this whole thing. And two of the other friends that had just met, so in my head, because they hadn't met each other, they didn't have any connection with each other, rolled their eyes. And so I went into immediate, they're judging me because I'm too much, because I've heard I'm too much so many times before. And I've also experienced someone coming into my space that I've created as safe and belittling me, that I then spent the next like 30 minutes being quiet and like trying to process. And by the habit of saying, okay, I don't feel safe, so let me pull back, observe what's happening so that I can process and feel ready to come back into the space, it's turned into shutting down. Like, it hasn't turned into observing, it's just turned into like not being present at all. And one of the people rolling their eyes, who's a chosen family, but I guess I'm still learning what it means to have chosen family that really can hold space for you like that. So like, come, let's go talk in the other room. And I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm fine. Like, it's fine. She was like, let's go talk about it. And she was like, girl, it had nothing to do with you. We looked at that man and said he looked fine. And then you said he looked good. So we rolled our eyes because, and you know, just the clarity and being able to say like, and then of course I cried and we talked about all of the trigger points to why that happened, and for her to just hold me and say, I've got you, and I'm proud of you for not stopping at shutting down, but taking the next step and saying and opening yourself when I offered it, was such a beautiful version of like healing and not holding on to anxiety that's not necessary. But I probably would have, because of the trigger points within me. So that's one. If we're ready to move on, we're taking a huge switch now. We've talked about internal anxiety, we've talked about relationship anxiety, but I think this one, especially in the times, not even that we're in the times of this week, this is a really big one that I want to touch on, which is like social impact, the dangerous effects of anxiety when it's not dealt with. Like DeVynne had brought up, various ways people will, I don't know about you, but I didn't really grow up learning how to deal with anxiety. It wasn't on any like PBS TV show I was watching. Like, I didn't really know. So one, using the house, the kitchen or the study, what do you wish America would come to terms with anxiety in America? And what does anxiety in America look like? I have some lists, and then I'd love for you to add on to it. White fragility, cancel culture, the various demands of capitalism, the work-life balance that most of us don't have. What other ways does it show up in like the heartbeat of social America? And how does it become dangerous?
Social media. I think social media is a really dangerous tool right now that can be a great thing, but I think it's similar as to the effects of COVID on our psyche. We don't even know the long-term effects of what social media is doing to us, and it's snowballing into this bigger thing that is kind of taken over our lives. And social media scares the shit out of me because it's made me feel things, really dark things about myself. And given me anxieties that probably wouldn't have been there if it weren't for that app or, you know, that message that I read. And so I'm sort of hoping that over these next few years, America wakes up to this idea of let's take back our power over these applications and use them for good, and try to develop healthier relationships within those applications, because this is very much a me thing. I'm actively working on this. It's very difficult, but I hope that we all kind of start to see that a bit.
You're a TikTok star too, so this is...
Well, that's exciting. The thing is, I've now realized, like, going from being an actor, and then I thought, what a great way to use my creativity is to, you know, make content and put content out there and make funny videos and make people laugh. what I didn't realize by then going viral was how lonely it actually was and how empty I felt inside after those likes kept coming in. And that gave me anxiety because it felt like, oh my God, I'm only as good as that last video that went viral. And now I'm nothing. And now I'm worthless. And that was just me, that was my dialogue that I created for myself in my head. But it made me realize that no amount of likes, I now have probably like 40 million views or something like that, 50 million. And no matter how big that number gets, it's never going to actually make me happy or make me feel like I, have achieved whatever it was that I was seeking out at the beginning. So that's what I'm trying to now reprogram myself to say, okay, what are you putting out there? What's the purpose of this? And are you putting out there just to make yourself happy and feel good? Or it was a really crazy year for that to all go down, but I'm glad to be on towards the other side of it.
I think I definitely sense a theme recently and increasingly defining our purpose based on external factors. And I think Tsilala talked about capitalism, work-life balance. Something that's really been thrown into the spotlight this year is, working to live, not living to work. And this year, I work in the tech startup space where you are only as valuable as how productive you were today. So it doesn't matter if you worked 365 days last year. I want to see that. How little are you sleeping? How much these were the themes of the conversations of, my mid-20s was like, how many cups of coffees have you had? Like, how many things have you done today? How many meetings have you had? Like, that was what the definition of success was. And so I was perpetually stressed and overworking myself because I felt like I had to meet those standards. And then this year there's been a real shift, although there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But I hope that what will come out of this pandemic is the refocusing on like what really matters in life, and that our jobs are not necessarily our purposes. And we don't have to tell other people whether or not they are successful based on what job they've held. I think in the arts, we hear this a lot. I was told when I went to college, like, what do you mean choral music? You're never going to make any money doing that. Like, why would you do something else? And I was like, but I care so much about it. And shouldn't I just explore what that, I don't need to make $100,000 a year to be successful. Isn't success how much enjoyment I'm getting out of living every single day? The community that I support, the community that I've curated, the value, how well I sleep at night. And I feel like this year has given me the space to take some of that back and say, I don't need to justify myself. I'm going to co-host this podcast because it really matters to me. And actually, the creativity that these uncomfortable conversations are benefiting my work life in such quantifiable ways, but in ways that I really see on an overarching theme of the kind of leader I want to be in this space, that I'm saying that I'm going to commit my time in this way, and I'm just not going to have an argument about it. This is what success is to me, is filling my space with all of these things. And don't even try and come at me, because I get one life, and so I'm going to live it the way that I want to live it. And so I hope that this year, the pandemic, continues as we are forced to spend more time at home. Work starts to change, and we can start to value the space that people need to actually live.
Can that happen? Can that happen if our basic needs aren't met? People prioritize work because they need the money to, maybe worry about healthcare that they don't also have access to.
That's a valid point, but I think that what I'm talking about are these jobs that are 40-hour-a-week jobs that expect you to show up 80 hours a week. That these jobs that expect you to sleep at your desk and never see your family because that is you committing to your work. That I'm not saying that people shouldn't work, of course, who's to define anybody's circumstance, but how much that is being taken from us because of industry standards, I think that that's, you know, I think that is what, I don't know if it's going to change, but that's what I hope for.
I would love to add to that, because you said earlier that, you know, when you were studying, people were saying, well, why don't you study something different that you can actually do something with? And I had a similar experience, and it actually kind of happened twice. So first it was when I decided to study literature. Everyone was like, what are you going to do with that? Like, that's ridiculous. And I was just like, well, I just want to do it, you know? And because I loved reading, it was a comparative literature. So I read I studied French, English, and German literature and kind of compared all of these. And I loved it. It was awesome. And it got me to read a lot of books. And then when I moved to New York, I moved here for a job. Then after, I think, 2.5 years, I quit that job. And I was freelancing for a while. And I started writing poetry. And I remember some of my family members being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, you're not doing anything. And I'm like, well, but I am, you know? And I felt, it was interesting to me that I was so unhappy in this job that I first had here. But everyone was like, oh, that's amazing. You work for a huge company, you know, you're like doing something awesome with your life. And then when I was doing something that actually made me happy, which was writing poetry, everyone was like, I'm so sorry for you. And I was just like, what? And then I realized, you know, it's those societal constructs that think that success has to be connected to corporate, you know, America or whatever it is, you know, or like big checks. But when you feel successful, and I did when I was writing poetry just as much as I do now that I have a job that I like, but people can't for some reason fathom that like money isn't the thing that makes you successful, you know? And so it was interesting to me because I was just like, you don't need to feel sorry for me. I'm perfectly fine, you know? And that's when I realized, you know, like there is a difference, but success is not just money. And so, yeah, I relate.
And yeah, I'll tie that into, you know, within America right now and within the pandemic and the social structure of America, the anxiety is being spread and broadcast, and people who don't have the ability to see the anxiety when it comes through their TV then absorb the anxiety and then become anxious. And anxiety is the thing that is promoted to everyone. And what I hope for with what's going on is that people will take this time or are able to find some way, some key to be able to see the true essence of who they actually are. Because once they're able, or we are able to see the eye that is able to witness the person that we are, then we can tap into something that allows us to evolve together. And that just vibration of evolution will do something to this planet that will make it better. But if you have to worry about, you know, money to get toilet paper so you can go take a shit, it's hard for you to sit down and be able to think about the essence and nature of life. So
yeah.
I like sort of to that point as well.
I know,
like,
we're gonna have you back.
Capitalism,
don't you worry.
Because I have very strong ideas around that, but I actually want to run with a little bit of what Marquis was getting at, is like something that I don't think it's necessarily tied to any one particular topic. I think it's like throughout a bunch of things that, you know, cause people anxiety and cause them to like spread lies and all kind of things, is like I'm looking at this house and I'm thinking of the study room, that research the unknown. I think, and I hope, like people start to spend more time in that room, like, you know, researching the unknown. And I think that's like across a bunch of facets. It's like, one, study yourself, you know, get to know yourself, and like, you know, spend some time like actually dealing with, you know, the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts that you have. I find like it because, one, because it's a pandemic, but two, like we have all this technology around us. So people feel it is more important to like get online and, find out what's going on because we can't necessarily as easily get out. Um, and, that obviously comes in, with social media, but not just social media. Like people will go and, just spend time. I go and spend time, like just scrolling through Twitter, like to educate myself, but it's not always a positive thing to like spend all these hours like consuming things, and ultimately what it is doing at times is like you're using that to not think, so that you don't have to have this alone time, so that you're not really dealing with what you're thinking about. You're just like consuming what other people are saying, that you think about, and that shapes it's like it's simultaneously like shaping what you're thinking, and then like making you seek, oh, I want to know what I want to know more that other people are thinking. And so it's like you're not sitting there and dealing with your own thoughts. And then, like I guess tying this to like more recent things, you have like, all of this like, oh, the election is stolen, yada yada. And it's like, I mean, just go look that up.
Google is free.
You can see they challenge these things. They challenge these things in court. Like people can like educate themselves. Like you're allowed to do this research. And I think I don't know, like there are just so many qualms in society are tied to like that lack of inner curiosity, I think, of like accepting ideas that are, put out there versus like just challenge it a little, just, do a little critical thinking. And I don't blame this on individuals because to some extent it's dependent on, the education system you were brought up in, how you were raised and everything. But like we do have
Free
like
as a bird.
Google is very free, like very, very free. And you could like click that link and just like read a little. Yeah, I mean, and that comes back to bite us too, because sometimes there's a lot of misinformation, but I don't know. I just think that study room is very important, and we're not spending a lot of time there.